Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Dizzle. I'm Tommy Dizzlemits. It's Monday, June 27th, 2011. Hopefully you guys enjoyed your weekend and you're starting the week off right with us. Today we're going to run through the weekend box office, let you know how the openers did. Cars 2 and Bad Teacher. We're also going to run through the top 10 performing movies of the summer box office season on the American side of things. But as we said, there are two big openers. Cars 2, showing Pixar's reliability, ended up being their 12th straight #1 opener. They have not had a movie come out that is not opened at #1, so congratulations to them. People might be talking about that Cars 2 wasn't necessarily like their previous efforts. It's not like Toy Story 2 compared to Toy Story 1. It almost is more like a direct-to-video movie that, there was cheap cash in. But at the same time, they might not necessarily have put the same story and deepness into it that they would have in their other movies to connect it to the families. This movie was essentially all about the little kids. Just, what's the stupidest shit in the world that little kids will want to see that the parents are going to have to sit through now? But, if you make a movie like that, ends up making $68 million. I think compared to attendance for the original Cars, it's right on par. The 3D illusion, as has been the case so far this summer, continues to drop a little bit more and more, only accounting for about 30 to 40% of Cars 2 opening gross, which is down from the levels of Thor earlier this summer. Slowly and slowly, audiences are not really giving a shit about 3D. Hopefully that turns around next weekend with Transformers 3, which is the first legitimate 3D event movie since Avatar came out. Pirates of the Caribbean might have been shot in 3D, but it was seriously a couple $100 million lesson of how do you make a boring movie. That's really how it goes. So hopefully Transformers 3 at least does something to reverse the tide for these 3D movies that aren't performing at the 3D levels that Avatar and other ones performed at. But at the same time, it's not. People are still going to the movies at least, and if you convey a clear premise and you put your ads out there and they know exactly what they're getting into, they're going to come out in droves still, as Bad Teacher did prove. Ended up making $31 million for the weekend. Had an over $10,000 per theater average, which is very, very nice. That means not a lot of empty seats in any of the theaters. Every summer you get a movie like that comes out. It started with Dodgeball, was the first clear example that just marketed it, showed you exactly what you were going to get from the movie, but it didn't matter because as long as that's what you were looking for, people would come out in droves. I'm willing to bet that if it actually doesn't cross the $100 million mark, just because R-rated comedies that will open strong but tend to drop off because the younger kids who want to see it can't get into it, and even if they're sneaking in and they're buying tickets for other movies, the money's not going to the right studio. But worst case scenario, if it doesn't cross $100 million, it's still going to sit in that Anchorman 80 to 90 million high range for a comedy. So at the very least, expect more of the awesome humor from Jason Segel to keep coming, especially after the Muppets movie comes out in a couple months. This is only going to help him. It's going to be like, oh, last thing he did was Bad Teacher, and it was successful even though it was an R-rated movie, and now he's doing the Muppets and it's successful. Man, someone must be successful nowadays. Oh, Jason Segel. Now on to the TV side of things for a minute. We originally were going to run through the television shows that are still coming back for the summer that are a couple weeks away. Some of them are beginning of July, some of them are not till August. Depends on what you're looking for. There's Man vs. Wild with Bear Grylls. There's Entourage in its final season. On top of that, you also have Jersey Shore coming back for second to last season. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. But we'll talk about the whole list later in the week. But if there is one that you absolutely need to know right now, it's probably Weeds. You've heard of the show. You either love it or you hate it. Or you probably just never watched it, because if you don't watch it and then you end up watching it, even if Weeds ain't your thing, it's still one of the best shows on television. And the new season premieres tonight, so later in the week we'll have a rundown, recap this episode. Last season ended on one of the craziest notes ever, so it's almost a wonder how the fuck they're going to get themselves out of the corner that they ended up in the last season. But at the same time, it's a show that you always think you know what's going to happen, and then they end up pulling some crazy-ass cards. So at the very least, it's going to be a very entertaining, unpredictable season of Weeds. We'll have more of a rundown of that later in the week. And for any Law & Order fans out there, doesn't matter if you watch the new episodes, you're one of the people that channel surf in the middle of the night when there's reruns of Law & Order, SVU, or Criminal Intent on, and then whichever one happens to catch your attention, you're stuck on it. And sad news, Criminal Intent did finally close up its decade-long run last night. We'll have a review later in the week on the final episode. Consistently good like anything else, and if you've seen The Social Network, you can tell where they got their inspiration for the episode. But as we said, we'll run through that later in the week. That's about all the time we have for today, since we're fast approaching that 5.5, 6 minute mark where most everyone's ADD likes to kick in by. So, the top 10 performers of the summer box office season discussion we'll have to hold off for tomorrow. On top of that, keep checking back all week long. We'll have that discussion going on. At some point, we'll have the review for the Weed season premiere, as well as the Law & Order Criminal Intent season finale. There's also a lot of movie news kicking around, so later in the week, we'll have some discussions about, despite the fact that Green Lantern's not doing well, they're still getting ready to move ahead with the second one. On top of that, Fast 5 just went on to Fast 6. So, as we said, we'll have all of the latest entertainment news for you all this week. Keep checking back here daily. For the Daily Dizzle, I'm Tommy Dizzlemits. We shall see you on Tuesday.